for you.
Oh, sorry.
No. I didn't mean that to be the way it was. Yeah.
The third table. Oh, do you want that little stand pulled over?
Could I have a music stand?
Yeah, that's what I said.
This is a bigger production than it should be. I mean, for the class, too. Actually, good evening, everyone. Before I say anything, that's perfect, Rita. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. This has been an interesting day since about 12:15 a.m. That's how long the day's been. Because my doggy Max decided it was time to wake up, eat dinner, and then play. And so I decided tonight he's going to get a tranquilizer. He just didn't want to calm down. You all know that. It's like having a child, and they don't want to sleep. That's it, you're up. It's sort of like, okay, we're playing doggy games. And we did. Okay, let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, our beloved Guru Deva, Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, beloved Swamiji, we humbly bow before you all. Divine Mother, great masters, we offer our lives into your hands, into your heart. We are here to share your teachings with all whom we meet in the most uplifted way. Show us how to make the best opportunity of every experience in our life, and to see with great clarity that the more effort we spend, that the more energy we bring to all that we do, the greater our spiritual success. There are no obstacles. There are only opportunities in all of life. Show us the way. Om Shanti. Amen. We decided that Lakshmi actually came up with this inspiration, that the best piece of music for tonight, so this is once again, we'll do the secret. Once again, I don't have the secret, but the secret, so these are secrets of prosperity, is, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, but the secret of prosperity is realizing that every failure is an opportunity for each of us to have our next success. And as we know from last time, it's a topic that we could talk about endlessly, really, because in a certain way, it speaks about all of life. This morning, I gave a 2-hour satsang we had. It was beautiful with the Ananda India online Kriya ministry. So it's all Kriya bonds. Many of them show up, and it's run by the monks that Devarshi works with. And it's always just beautiful because the people are there, even online, you can feel their energy. Now, I won't remember this, but give me one moment. The topic was supposed to be realizing our oneness with God through Kriya. And it's such an obvious, like that's what Kriya is. It just feels like such an obvious statement. I was very inspired when I spoke to Rajas, who's the monk who arranges this. This was quite a while ago. We had just had that Sunday service, deeds versus intentions, which was a very inspiring topic. You know, just very simply how important it is that we hold the right intention at all times and then behave accordingly. And if you remember, it's where the story of the mosquito comes in, and that very, very meaningful teaching from Patanjali, because Master wants to kill the mosquito that's disturbing him and keeping him away from being able to listen clearly to Sri Yukteswar's discourse that he's giving that night. And he literally raises his hand. I know we all know this story, but it's okay, we need to hear it to get into this. And then he says to himself, here we are discussing Patanjali, who was teaching us ahimsa, nonviolence. How could I kill this mosquito? So he stops, and Sri Yukteswar just looks at him and says, why don't you just kill it? And Master says to him, but you always teach us nonviolence. Are you telling me I should kill this mosquito? And Sri Yukteswar just looks at him and says, you already did. It's such a profound lesson about watching the mind and what it means to be able to get a hold of the mind. And one of the questions that was asked this morning towards the end of the satsang, they opened it up for questions, which we love. And, 20-minute answers to every question. It's such a great way to teach. But one of the questions, which is very frequently asked, is, I really feel that I have these teachings, but then I go out into the world. So when I'm at home and I'm meditating, or I'm by myself, or I'm listening to these chants, all the time I feel I've made it now. I'm there. I feel so centered and uplifted. And then I go out into the world, and the world's there, and in almost no time, these things are triggering me. That wasn't how the question was worded, but that was it. And so I said, well, there's a long answer to this, but first let me say, welcome to the human condition, which is really what it is. But I said, here's what's so important to know about this, and that is, it is the joy of the human condition. It's exactly why we chose another life. And I want to say more about that. But right before I came in, I was listening to little snippets of this class 2 weeks ago to see where did we go, where didn't we go. And you may remember, those of you who were here, that Pranav really shared in such a courageous and humble way about this issue that he struggles with. I'm going to repeat it, Pranav, because you did. You told the whole world 2 weeks ago, so I feel like I can say it. But he said, he was talking about his ego. He actually said that about how much trouble he has with his ego. And his story was because he's not working right now. And he said, I've always looked at so many jobs as being demeaning. They're beneath me. I was a manager. I was making good money. And I can't come and do some menial job. And he said, but even more than that, he worked with people, with professional people who know him and his ability. He knew, he said 2 weeks ago, that if he went to them and asked them for work, that they would give him a job. But he couldn't humble himself in that way. He probably still hasn't. Am I correct? Yeah, because he reached some limit within himself. And we shared about that and about how each of us, for sure, we have those limits. And even when we say to ourselves, this is ridiculous, this is just ridiculous that I can't do this, but it doesn't change necessarily the fact that you are not yet able to do it. And in the talk this morning, this satsang is really what it was, though there was a talk at the beginning, I was saying that when we are souls living in the astral plane, and Swamiji speaks about this in Raja Yoga, I believe it's in the very last chapter, but if I'm wrong, it's only by a chapter or two, so it doesn't matter. But he says that those souls in the astral plane who want to make the most progress, now they're there floating around in this plane. It's not one plane, but whatever astral plane we're on, where everything is so elevated from where we are. The sounds, the colors, the music, you communicate via thought, energy. From everything that we're told, it's spectacular. So you could stay, the soul could stay. It's a choice that the soul gets to make. But Swamiji says, those souls who are really interested in making spiritual progress, they choose a human birth. Now, why would we do that? It's hard here. It's really hard. Even if we're not blatantly suffering, like most of us, if not all of us, I don't want to speak for anybody, but we're running into life issues. I mean, I have a lot of them myself, but I'm not really suffering in the most horrible ways. So even if we're not like us, it's still hard because we're here wanting to make spiritual progress, and the ego, Satan, I mean, call it what you will, he has us by our feet, and he's not going to let us go. He's holding us down. We call that habit. We call it many things that we cannot overcome, not yet. But we're here because we're determined to do it. So yes, it's hard when we go out into the world, when we're anywhere other than, and let's face it, sometimes it's hard even when we're sitting at our altar. It is hard. If it wasn't hard, we'd all just float into samadhi or raise ourselves up into samadhi. That would be it. But we don't. We can't yet. We have some very good meditations, but often we're troubled or we're thinking about other things. So yes, everything is a challenge here. And then we could say, so what? That's the greatness of the human life, is that if we have the courage, if we have the commitment, if we're willing to bring the energy, to make the effort. These are all words that Swamiji and Master used. I had 9 pages of notes, typewritten, like this. See? Little space. 9 pages on this topic from Master and Swamiji. Every paragraph, they're talking about energy, they're talking about effort. Because, so what if it's not easy? This is what we are here to do. It is exactly why we chose this birth. And we chose it exactly as it is. We didn't decide to come and be born and then go, oh man, if I had known this is what it was going to be like, I'd leave. Well, we, the human beings, say that sometimes, but not the soul. The soul knows, this is why I'm here. I'm here. And I gave that analogy 2 weeks ago. Most of you will remember. about when I was a runner, a long-distance runner, and how arrogant I was, that if I couldn't run a minimum of 8 miles in any one day, I wouldn't run. Because it was like I was running 15 miles a day. Why would I go out and run 3 miles or 4? It was, and I said last week, it was so stupid. It's just stupid. But that's how the ego works. If I have to ask for a job, I'm not doing it. We have to ask ourselves, do we really want a job? Really? Do we really want a job? I don't know. Do I really want the benefits of running? I don't know. Or does my ego just want to say, 15 miles again, come home to Barry. I did 15 miles again. So where was the joy? What was I running for? I'm not saying it was all that, but I'm saying lots of ego in that when you won't go out and run 3, 4, or 5 miles, or you won't ask. And you said this, I'm not making fun of you. That's why I told that story. Honestly, I could tell more stories about myself because we're stuck here in certain ways. We just are. When we're honest, which we also talked about last week, an essential ingredient in this life to make it, we just do it. You know, I just got an email from a patient of mine. I know he'll never watch this, ever. Not for so many lifetimes that it won't matter. We won't run into each other again, probably. So he's a man who did a great job recovering from, I'm giving this whole talk. Did I pray even? Oh, I did pray at least, good. We're waiting for music and meditation. We'll get there. But he was an opiate addict. And I worked with him, and that's what I used to do a lot of that. And we got him off of opiates. This is years ago. I mean, maybe 10. And I still work with him, and I talk with him now. It's just every 4 months. But I still have him on a medicine called buprenorphine. Buprenorphine is a medicine that grabs the receptors that the opiates used to grab. But it works in a very interesting way. It's called agonist-antagonist. It grabs them, but then it antagonizes the receptors so that you have no cravings. You take this drug, and you have no cravings for opiates. I mean, it changed the whole world and the concept of opiate treatment, and it saved, God only knows how many millions of lives. And, you know, anyway, that's the story. Well, I have a rule with my clients. I see a fair number of these people. I want to know a minimum of 2 weeks before you need a new prescription. I don't want to get a call at 10 o'clock at night. I'm out of my meds, because if they run out of meds, they go into withdrawal. And it's worse than opiate withdrawal. But I don't want them putting me on that line with that. Really, it's still addictive behavior. I'll just mistreat Shanti, who's here. So I say 2 weeks. So this patient manages to always find a reason to call me the night before, maybe 2 days before, with an emergency. Always. There's always an emergency. So I fired him about the last time he did it, 3 months ago. And I said to him, this story has a point that's relevant here. I said to him, you know, you've been abusing me in this way for too long. You're about to get married. You're about to take over this business. So consider this the greatest gift I've ever given you. You're fired. Go to your doctor, find another doctor. Not easy to find doctors, by the way, who will prescribe this medicine. And even though the federal law just changed, and most PCPs could, they have to take a special course. And most docs don't love dealing with addicts, so they're not inclined to do it. He called me, he wrote me, he begged me. I mean, I could show you all this. I said, I'm going to keep this in your record. Please don't do this. I'm so sorry. You're right. I really need you. I don't want to see another doctor. He meant it, of course. I've been great with him. right now, right before I walk in here, I get an email at least, because I tell them not to text me. Do not text me, send me an email. I'll get it, but I don't want to be texted all day. So all of my clients know that. Not for you guys, but for the addicts who have no discretion. Because I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. But then he writes, this is why I'm telling you this story. And I'm sure he's sorry. But then he said to me, I turned 40 last week. This Friday, my fiance is turning 33. This is what he's writing to me. In 10 days, I'm getting married. And he said, I have so many excuses. And you know, I thought to myself, are you kidding me? You turned 40 and you can't call me? Your girlfriend's turning 33? It's not even a big birthday. I don't even care if you're getting married in 10 days. I'm so full of excuses. But you know what? That's what we all do. We have, I tell this story and I make him seem silly, but these are the excuses that we have. I turned 40, she's turning 33, I'm getting married, this, that, the other. I don't care that for 10 years you've been telling me. For 10 years, don't text me the night before you need something. And really, if God would actually speak to us like I'm speaking right now, what would he say to us? I tried to tell you. I showed you this. I emailed you how many times over how many? I wrote it in stone when it was the Stone Age. I've been trying to tell you, how many excuses will you have for not turning these failures into perfect opportunities, these ways that you've brought lifetime after lifetime after lifetime that are pure ego that you're stuck with, and just say, like I could say to all of you and you get it, that is the most lame excuse. That's what I want to write to him. There's a part of me that wants to say, I didn't answer him, so he won't hear from me tonight. He'll be panicked because I know what that withdrawal looks like. I literally, just before I came in, I wasn't trying to make him suffer, but there is a little part of me that's saying, maybe I just won't answer him till tomorrow. Maybe he won't get to know. Now, I probably won't do that because what's the point of just being mean? You know, I said to him 3 months ago, I'm taking you back, but here's the condition. But guess what? We can only do what we can do. You know, it's tragic when you think of it. Imagine the progress he would make if he never did this again. Really, just this simple thing. Put it on your phone. Call Shanti today, last week, 2 weeks ago. So simple. So simple. What are you talking about, Shanti? Run 3 miles. Pranav, what are you talking about? Call these friends of yours if it's real, if they'll really give you a job. Don't be silly. It could cost you how many lives? Or me, or who else wants to tell their story? I mean, it's endless. But it's what this is all about, because what Master and Swamiji say to us, I just looked down here, and the line above what I really wanted to read says that success at anything depends upon concentrated energy, because that creates a magnetic field. Now remember, we came in to conquer these failures. That's why we're here. We didn't come in just to party, not us. We didn't come in just to party. Some people did. They're a little behind us. We came in to do this. Success at anything depends on concentrated energy because it generates a magnetic field that will draw to us. And remember, I know I said this last week, concentrated energy And as we raise our energy, we raise ourselves into a field where, never mind that our guru can reach us, the more energy we give it, the more concentrated it is, the higher up our spine we go, the easier it is to go higher up our spine. It really does get easier. When you go out for a run, the hardest mile is the first mile. The second hardest is the second mile, then the third. But by the time you've hit the fourth mile, your endorphins have kicked in, and it's not that hard to run 10. It's easier than it is to run 2 every day. That's what happens with us. We have to believe that. We have to keep making this effort, because when we just kick Satan out and we say, "Get thee behind me, I'm doing this," before we know it, it's a joy to do it. It's a pleasure. And our positive energy and our joy is lifting us up like a pillow of something that's supporting us, lifting us up, and it's lifting up everybody around us. But then Swamiji goes on to say, equally important is solution consciousness. So we cannot keep allowing ourselves to have this excuse. It's too hard, it's too hard, it's too hard. No, it's not. Remember when Asha tells this story on herself, when she was crying and crying and crying, and Swamiji was just walking around his apartment ignoring her, and she was crying, and he was ignoring her. And finally, he said something to her, and she said, "It's always," and Asha is so much more dramatic than I am, so she could do this better, but "it's always so hard to know what God wants." And Swamiji says, "No, it isn't." And he walked away, because honestly, it isn't. We don't want to see it, but it isn't. Solution consciousness. Then he says, don't mix with people who only see the obstacles, but with those who find solutions and succeed in their efforts. Go out of our way to spend time with those people. That's who we need to be near, because magnetism is just that. It's magnetic. And if we're around negative magnetism, even sometimes in our families, we have to lift ourselves up. We don't want to hurt these people. We don't want to reject them. Even if we're married, this was another question this morning. What about we were talking about Kriya as a pathway to finding oneness with God. I mean, as I said, I could have talked about anything, because that's the purpose of Kriya. There is no other purpose. Fortunately, it turned out that there were other things. There were ways to talk about that were meaningful. But one of the questions was, what about when there's a lot of negativity in our family? Very interesting question. And I said to them, interesting that you should ask that question, because that's been this life for me. That's exactly my situation. Now, they don't believe that, because they see me. I am, that morning, Vinaya Swami giving the talk. I've made it. I've succeeded. They have no idea what I go home to every day. I mean, the truth is now I've transcended a lot of it. But this is 37 years later. It was hard. So, but what does hard mean to us? Greater grist for our mill. It's perfect, but we can't get lost in it if we say, what can I do? It's how my mother is, or my father, or my child, or my partner. They're just negative. What else can I do? Okay, you get to choose them again next time. Maybe they'll be your mother next time. Maybe they'll be your child. Who knows? Or you can fix it. You can actually fix it. You can transcend it. And you can do it lovingly. But you can do it. And if you don't do it, it stays there. If you don't move into that state of consciousness where negativity becomes the correction, because you may not remember this, I wouldn't have either, but Master and Swamiji speak constantly about the fact that negativity is simply all of what we've carried from past lives forward. We always have the choice. How many more lives do we want to live like this? But it is a choice. And of course they're not easy choices because we're athletes. We're 15-mile-a-day people. We're not 1 or 2 mile a day people. You know, we're not at a place where we can say, I had my 40th birthday, so I couldn't call you. I don't dare want to ask him, what exactly were you doing for your 40th birthday that you couldn't call? You are in recovery, right? I mean, you know, so it's your birthday. Who can't, not even call, he doesn't have to call. It's a 2-line email. But that's not who we are. We're not there. So that's hard for him. What we're doing is hard for us. But it just means, look at this. Look at this. I'm at a place where I'm no longer just doing curls with 10-pound weights. Wow, I've gone up to 12 and a half pounds or 15 pounds. And boy, is it hard. But look at this. You know, it's amazing. That's what it is. It's our spiritual muscle, our spiritual power. We're not here to be lazy. We're here to work on it. Okay, let's watch this song before we move into some discussion.
Behold all the wonders God's grace can bestow, if you but reclaim what you've given. Why not ask of God any wonder you crave? Worship me to satisfy all human needs. Dominion now over all this noble earth. All I ask of you is worship me.
Get thee behind me, Jesus declared. Satan, know you not, our Father offers love in your stead. His gift of love to all is my only food. He is all I own. What does man need but him?
Then the darkness lifted, love destroyed Satan's power. Then at last the Savior could begin bringing all to God. For he taught them in freedom, wanting not in return. All he offered was perfect peace, perfect freedom of soul.
God is all I love, He is all there is. Wise is He who says, I am wholly His.
God is all I fear. Lo, my throne of power shaken by his love, was destroyed in that hour.
Throughout all the world, a new spirit was born. Jesus brought to men's hearts hope for those steeped in sin.
God is all I love. He is all there is. Wise is he who says, I am wholly his. God is all I love. He is all there is. Wise is he who says, I am wholly his.
That is so powerful. And it really just says it all. I mean, just 4 parts, short song. But, what are we going to do here? What are we going to let win? I'll just say one more thing. There is a very interesting point that Darshan made in, I think it was his Saturday workshop, but sometime in this past weekend, where he retold the story of Adam and Eve. And it was very, it's funny, I have this phrase that I've used about his book, which I had the pleasure of reading early so that I could write a review for it. I delayed long enough, unfortunately, months, that the review didn't make it into the book, but it's up on the publication page. I was really taken with the book, and I said it's, I always forget the adjective that I use, but I can't think of it. I talk about it with the Kriya breath too. Deceptively simple. It's deceptively simple because Atmajoti, she's not here tonight, but before he spoke, she said to me, I read the book. It just seemed so simple. I said, wait for it. That's what I said to her. And then Saturday, because I knew it wasn't. It felt simple because that's the way he is. He speaks and he tells you his stories and he takes these great teachings and he makes it, just gives us little digestible bites. But there's so much wisdom. And she was like this the whole time. I mean, she was just, I looked at her, I said, I told you. She's like, you were right. But he turned the Adam and Eve story on its head in this way. He said, the way the story's always told, and he told it in great length, and I'm not going to do it, but because they sinned, that God turned away from them. That's how Christians hold it. That's a short summary, but that's it. You were really bad, Eve. You bit into that apple, and then you convinced Adam how good it was. It tasted good, and it was no big deal, and he too should take a bite of the apple. And look at you. You both fell away from God. That's how the story's often repeated. He said, I've often wondered who turned away from whom. And he turned the story around. And he said, they, out of their shame, decided that, and there's more words to this. If you weren't here and you had a chance, and you have a chance to watch it, please do. It's probably not up because it was a paid-for event, but anyway, when you watch those things that were paid for, if you want to, just make a little donation. That's what I would say, and watch them. We don't want anybody not watching them. But he said, out of their shame, you may remember, it was interesting to me because 2 weeks ago, I started by saying, of all of the human emotions, and you commented on this, Viveka Devi, shame is one of the hardest things to transcend. It's harder than fear. It's harder than anxiety at times, or greed. We could talk about a lot of things. When we feel ashamed of ourselves, we hide one way or another, either by denial or creating a delusion or just leaving. At times, just leaving. And I mean, wherever we are, we just take ourselves somewhere else because we're so sure that everybody knows that we're awful. It's hard to face that, those, what causes us shame in ourselves. It's very hard. I've experienced it myself on more than one occasion, and I've watched many, many people with it. But then Darshan said, because their shame was so deep, right, that they turned from God. They couldn't bear to be in his light. And when Swamiji writes, take failures, I mean, they're not really failures, and of course Swamiji knows that, but those perceived failures, and turn them into corrections. The secret of prosperity is doing that. That's what we're talking about. Prosperity, spiritual prosperity, is by taking those failures and turning them into corrections. We don't do that if we're ashamed. Look at where God, Adam and Eve, they're still trekking through all of us trying to find their way back. I mean, it's become a very long journey. Instead of just looking at God and saying, wow, look at this. You warned us. We couldn't hear it. We ate the darn apple. We're sorry. Show us the way again. Here I am. No, they covered themselves up and laughed. So I think just interesting how all of these talks and all of these moments, because truth is one, I mean, it's just, no matter where we look, if we're looking for it, whether it's in a song, that's the whole story of our lives. We could listen to this song every day, and it just tells us, nope, Satan, get out of here. And David Gamel, he's a perfect Satan. He looks like Satan as far as I'm concerned. He sounds like Satan. He's got that voice. And his eyebrows are always bushy and they're going. And then David, I thought this is honestly one of your finer moments because you had the power. I remember I told you this after the performance. I didn't say it about this song. But with such love and sweetness, it was a perfect combination. It felt divine. And no matter how many times Satan tried to get in front of you, you just weren't having it. It was beautiful. It was really well done. We watched about 4 or 5, but we chose this one to play tonight. It's really good. So anyway, let me quit talking, at least for a while now, and see if anybody has anything they want to share or talk about. Anything?
Well, I just want to say that I don't want to talk about anything that's shameful to me or that I'm working through and whatnot, because, we're all doing that. But I just want to say how thankful and how grateful I am for being in community, because some of the highest souls I've seen are going through the same thing. Details are different, but we all have our stuff. But they're so honest about it and so open about it that it gives me the courage and so the strength to be honest about it, if only with myself. But it has definitely changed the trajectory of the way that I deal with shame and any other thing that goes along with that.
I think I feel the same way you do, of course. You know, just, I felt it this weekend. There's a lot that I could say about my experience with Darshan. I mean, just my personal experience. But I know him, and we got to spend a lot of time over this past week, and he's very revealing, and like you say, in many ways, working through whatever he's working through, or up at the Colony Leaders Retreat. But we watch other souls doing this, and it helps us neutralize what would otherwise be devastatingly shameful. And I think that's what you're saying, and I appreciate that. I do want to add this, and I think this is important. It's not as good. I don't think we make as much spiritual progress all the time anyway, if we just keep it to ourselves. I don't. I think the purification ceremony speaks to that. It's a huge act. We do it every week so we could lose the strength of it and the spiritual magnitude of it. But to collect ourselves, I don't know, most of you knew Uma, a woman who lived in our community, Uma. She was quite the character. But when she came up for purification, and I hope she's listening right now, she would sit down, and she would sit there for quite a while, and at a moment you'd have to peek because new people sit there for quite a while too. They don't know they're supposed to say anything, so you have to make sure it's not somebody new in front of you when you're the light bearer. But then, what did she always say? She collected herself in whatever way she was doing. Then she would say, I seek purification by the grace of God now. That's what she always said. She got herself together, and she meant it when she said it. I always felt that when she came up to me. So I'm saying, if we do that, we don't have to say that, but we get ourselves in that place of great humility and strength. I seek purification by the grace of God, kneeling in front of the masters and in front of a channel for those masters. And then we hear those words, those beautiful words that Swamiji wrote. Open your heart to me, and I will enter. Anyway, we all know the words, and we know what it is. But there is something about not demeaning ourselves. No, not blame, but humility in front of God and gurus. And sometimes that's with our guru bhais. And I think I said this here 2 weeks ago, but I'm not sure. If maybe I didn't, maybe I said it in another talk, but where I said to people, the only way through this, because nobody that we're going to meet in this life is perfect. Swamiji was as close to that as anybody will ever meet. But even Master said to him, you will be free at the time of death. Now Jyotish is so highly evolved, but he's not an avatar yet. He's not. He would say that to you. So, and then from there, it's wherever it is. But if we find those souls, not just souls who soothe us when we're with them, not just souls that we can laugh a lot with, but those people who we feel have the spiritual integrity and the ability to put aside their limitations because they will have them. And I said a couple weeks ago, just find 2 people. Was that here? I think it was here. Anyway, find 2 people that you know will do that you can trust, and then that you could go to them because saying it out loud, bringing it out, there's most of the time the possibility that more spiritual progress would be made than what we can do when we're running around with it in our heads, particularly when it's shame. I'm telling you, I've been there. This has not happened to me, honestly, for some years now. But when I was first giving Sunday services here for years, this is after a lifetime of public speaking, but it wasn't here, and it wasn't with them. I would go home, and I would be so sure that I was so awful that I should move out of the area before Monday came. And I was serious. You're laughing, but I was serious. I would never show my face again. I had just embarrassed not only myself, but all of Ananda. I had to quickly get the recording off the Ananda site. This is what I would do. Now, a couple of services ago, when I sat down, I said to myself, what was that? That was about as disjointed, and did I say a word to anybody? But you know what? I just gave it to Master. I wasn't that ashamed now. But still, I just thought that was, now it turns out you walk out and, Master plays with us. So the first 10 people that come and see me, Shanti, you said exactly what I needed to hear today. Somehow somebody got something out of it. I'm sure if I watched it, I wouldn't think it was the best sermon. What Shivani said, you just can't be you're not a 10 all the time. But the point of this is that sharing it, working through it, when I used to go home at night and I would perseverate about it, I wouldn't sleep for 2 nights, just telling myself again and again, that was awful, that was terrible, how could you have done that? Who is going to help me out of that? So to find those souls that we trust, so that even when they say something that we can't immediately resonate with, we will trust them enough. And I just had an experience a couple of months ago with Jyotish and Devi like this. It's still happening. They did something. I just can't imagine that they did it. Why did they do that? I just see it causing difficulty, and it's in my mind. But I would never say that to them. I haven't questioned them. And I just say to myself, wait for it. Either you'll see why they did it, or you won't, and it's okay. They did it, you're not there either yet or never. You'll never have done it that way. It's okay, But I would go to them with anything, because I know when I speak to Jyotish, he gets centered, he goes in, and he waits for it. And then he tells me what is right for me. So I'm saying it because I feel it's an important, not just word picking, but it's in here too. It's in here. Well, even where Swamiji said, watch the company that you keep. That's so important. So yes, we're living in community, but the souls are in different places. And I think it helps us more, even when we can just say to somebody, wow, I'm really wrestling with this. What do you think about it? We may not be able to take in what they say, but if we trust them, it expands the consciousness with which we're holding it. So.
This is more of a comment than a question, but I was also really taken by the way Darshan was explaining just the shift in perspective with the story of Adam and Eve. And what you were just saying a few minutes earlier before answering the second, or responding to David's comment about how if the secret to overcoming, or the secret to prosperity is using our failures as a stepping stone toward our success, but we're blinded or we're stagnant because of our shame, we can't actually use, there's no momentum there, it's really profound. I was just thinking about the story when you said it from the AY, when Yogananda returns after fleeing to the Himalayas to his guru. And at least for me, I've always looked at that story from the perspective of Sri Yukteswar's response, where he says, I have had no expectation of you. And that's the lesson for us to take away. But even all of what you're just sharing right now, to flip that and look at it from the other perspective of what it is like in all of that shame, in all of that, here Yogananda, Mukunda comes back, but in the face of such extreme love, there's nowhere to go and there's nowhere to turn. It doesn't matter how ashamed you are, and just how lucky we are. I mean, I'm on a very, on my own scale, in a personal way, I get to experience that even with you. You may give a lesson to me or say something to me that, jabs or hurts or I feel ashamed of, and then I think, oh, the ego wants to then just say, oh, I'm mad, oh, she's mean, oh, that, whatever it may be. And then you'll call and say, want to come over? Yeah, because there's no other response. There's just, in the face of that love, it's just, again, these are just comments, but it's very deep what you're sharing.
We never get to hear, correct me, I don't think there's anybody else here who's Jewish, so all of you, maybe other than the Hindus, might know the answer to this. What happens after the prodigal son gets home? Is there anything in the Bible about it? Because it's such a beautiful story. He comes in like a beggar, so ashamed of himself, so just focused on his failures. How could I have missed all of this? Look at what I did. I squandered everything that was given to me. I mean, just imagine that, when that realization comes. And the story is so blatant in its description. And then there is the father, who just is so thrilled to see his son. And of course, Lakshmi and I, everybody in this room knows, we have this God-given relationship. In a way, I could say it to each one of you. I feel that, but for whatever reason, it was from the minute she walked in here and I saw her in the back of the temple for all that time with her hood, I just thought, she's not staying under that hood. She came and it's been beautiful. So we have these energetic tug of wars. They're not infrequent, but I always leave feeling so much love for her. And she's describing it. It's just nothing's ever going to get in the way of that. Now, in recent years, because of my own effort, honestly, I feel it with not just more and more and more people, but with almost everybody. Even if I need to deliver hard messages, people might go away thinking I'm mad or I'm judging but I'm just not. I'm just not. I just had this fight with a friend, and many of the details will be left out, but when the friend was writing me these letters, please forgive me, it was awful. Literally, I'm begging you to forgive me. I don't know why I wrote that email. It was horrible. I knew it was just going to start a fight and blah, blah, blah. And I wanted to, but I didn't write it this way. I wanted to write back and say, what fight? But what I wrote is I said, no, my heart is soft and open, and there was never a problem, which was true. But when we're on the other side and we're thinking that we were terrible, and in this instance, she felt like the loss could be so great for a lot of reasons. But no, so I'm able to be there more, but it's always where God is with us, with all of us, always. So I wonder, we hear about the prodigal son and we hear how he was greeted, and of course the lesson, we feel shame. God never quit loving us. He's never quit wanting us. Doesn't matter what we've done. But I'm curious, is there any more to that story? In other words, does the prodigal son get it?
There we go. As I recall, Jesus used that parable and didn't say, he was using the parable as a teaching of forgiveness, right? And the prodigal son's brother was pretty unhappy also in the story. We don't talk about that much. But I don't recall him ever returning to that parable. That, it was a metaphor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, I don't know, again, you were raised in all of this. I didn't see the story so much one of forgiveness as eternal love.
Yes,
Is
that's
that
true. Yeah,
fair?
absolutely true. Yeah, nothing to forgive.
Nothing to
Yeah,
forgive.
that's true.
Yeah. Any other? Lakshmi?
There was a question that came through from someone online. We've spoken to a lot of it already, but I'll just read what they wrote, and if you have anything else to add to it. So they start out by saying that they were really struck last week when we talked about The Secret, and particularly, I'll just pick up from here. I feel this is a very important corrective with respect, she's speaking to The Secret, with respect to our own attitudes toward mistakes. Mistakes don't need to be a source of feelings of shame or failure. They are informative moments in life like any other. My question is, how do we balance that with Swamiji's understanding of humility as deeply truthful recognition of both our genuine abilities and limitations? In my line of work, I often counsel people who either, 1, dwell in their mistakes, or 2, try to leapfrog over their mistakes by denying them. Neither of these approaches work. How do we encourage people to take a balanced approach to acknowledging with humility the strengths they have to draw on and honestly acknowledging what needs to be corrected?
It's a good comment / question, even though we have been talking about it a lot. But again, I know Lakshmi was teasing with me today. I forget how she put it, but she said something about my relationship with Patanjali in these last couple of months. It's just suddenly Patanjali's coming to me. And I'll share a story about this morning and the satsang with India in a minute, because it was very compelling to me. So I just will see if I can share it, if it'll be that for all of you. But this is, of course, and I've mentioned this, it comes up so often, this is one of the niyamas, of course, which is self-study, introspection. And it's, the further along we are on this journey back to God, we just keep looking at these teachings. I mean, that's why it's so beautiful that Master's first line in his poem, God, 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 because it is the spiral stairway of wakefulness, and that beautiful image that you can look at the same spot so many times, but when you're looking at it from a different perspective, either height or around the corner, it's very different. You remember, some of you, this analogy came to me in a talk years ago, and I used it a lot for a while, about the difference between living, and this is important for whoever asked this question in this line of work. If you live at the corner of 5th and Madison in New York, and you live on the first floor, when noontime comes and there's throngs of people in New York City, if you look out of your window, you see a huge number of people, throngs of people, most of them scornful a little bit, serious. I mean, the comment was always, New Yorkers don't smile at lunchtime. We'll ask Dave in a little while, he's going, if that's still true. You see a flood of cars, mostly taxis. You hear them honking, you hear the noise. You just get that feeling of, it's crazy here. But if you move up to the 5th floor, or then the 10th floor, or the 15th floor, and you look out of your window at noon, same place. You're in the same building, but everything changes. And of course, that's how we are. That's why that image of the spiral staircase is so beautiful, because we keep coming around. So, and then we get to that place where we have the courage, or we're working with somebody professionally or who we trust enough that we're willing to say, okay, I'll go there with you. I'll say to you, boy, I have this shortcoming or this problem, or I can't do this, or I see it and I know I should, but I can't. And I'm willing to expose that part of myself to you. To me, it's like lancing an abscess when we share it with somebody else. You know, everything pours out and there's room for healing, because it doesn't go away otherwise. I used to say, people come onto a spiritual path and they think they can take all of the psychology, all of the feelings, the emotions, the anger, all of what we would call psychological, and sweep it under the proverbial rug and just declare their love of God and it would all go away. No, we need to have a very healthy ego before we can let go of it. It must be very strong and healthy, but with right attitude, not with arrogance, not certainly with denial. It's sort of like, look at that. Look at what I just did again. I thought I learned this lesson. I just tripped in there again. But with all humility and honesty and courage, to genuinely look at it, not feel like, oh, did it again. No, that doesn't work. It's like, okay, let me talk about this again. Let me look at it, not to obsess about it, but so we have to encourage each other, our friends, our clients, which is what I think you're talking about, to look at it as much as they can. But just like if we wanted to stare at the sun during the eclipse, it would blind us. Our role as friends and as counselors is to be constantly asking ourselves, what are they really ready to look at? Because otherwise, what's the point? When I was in India, my last trip, I spent a lot of time alone there, so it's very different when you're alone. It takes away a lot of the energy that gets dissipated with chit-chat and everything else. So I started seeing things in a very different way, and one of the things that came to me, and this will sound so obvious, and I know it, but I had the experience of it, so it wasn't just a mind thing. It was very real. I thought to myself, I realized, it wasn't a thought, Swamiji knew all of this was going to happen and exactly how it would happen. He knew what would go on in Pune. He knew what would go on in Chandigarh. He knew wherever it was. He knew what would happen at the village and with all these colonies and communities. He knew all of it. But what did he tell us? He told us what we could hear. If he had tried to tell us all of this, no, we couldn't have heard it. You know, we're just talking about the lawsuit in our Sadhaka training class. And there is that. It's not a story, it's the truth. When one of the lawyers was hired, Swamiji said to all of the people who were involved in the lawsuit, he's not the lawyer for us. And they said, oh, but Swamiji, we have him. And he said a second time, no, he's not with us. He's not the right lawyer. And they pushed back again. This is all of these people, right? I mean, I'm not going to name their names, but all of the people who were with him in the lawsuit. And he said, okay, He didn't fight anymore, and he knew what it was going to mean. He was being slandered. He was being ridiculed. His name was in newspapers, all of these lies and this horribleness. Okay, he pushed twice. No, they couldn't change. No, other than if harm is being done somewhere, other than that, he just gave us what we could take. And those are very important examples of how we would move with people we love, with our clients, with our friends, even with our partners, always holding for ourselves what is the spiritual cost here, because that's also important. The other comment Swamiji made is my litmus test is always if it's disturbing my inner peace, then it's not good. That's what he tuned into. So sometimes we have to make hard decisions around that for ourselves. But the decision that we make for other people should always be with, as he also said, the truth should always help people. He said that. So that has come in more and more and more to me. Now, again, there are times where we just have to be stronger with other people, but only if there's danger, potential danger. Otherwise, no. We treat people the way we need to be treated, with kindness, with love, with none of the meannesses of the heart. No, that's what Sri Yukteswar said. That's what this book is about. That's what the June class will be about. How do we move spiritually? Just releasing those. So as we're doing all of this, I could read any of these. There's so much more. I said to Lakshmi and James today, right before class, honestly, we could come back in 2 weeks and in 4 weeks and still, because there's so many things I've highlighted now in 2 colors that we still haven't quite said it all or absorbed it all. This is so meaningful. It's so much at the essence of the nature of the human condition, because we live in a state of duality. So we will make mistakes. That's the nature of it. But the other side of it is how deeply all of us want to keep moving up that spiral staircase. There was something that came up this morning. It's gone now. It's okay. It was meant to be said this morning and not now. Anybody else have any comments?
The quote that you read earlier when you said, Swamiji talked about, basically it was the one about be careful of your company.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Can you read that again? Is it handy? You don't have to, but no. I remember it enough.
Oh, it's okay. It's, I'm sorry. Oh, here's what he said. Yeah. We were talking about solution consciousness.
Yes.
And he said, don't mix with people who only see the obstacles, but with those who find solutions and succeed in their efforts. He said this. Listen to this. I didn't read this before. At Ananda, when I see people with problem consciousness, I keep them at a distance. I don't mean to be unfriendly to anyone, but low energy people can pull you down with their failure consciousness.
It's really profound to me. I had an experience where I was trying to work with someone, and ultimately the problem consciousness kept disturbing my consciousness. And, and so they challenged me at one point and said, I feel like you're avoiding me. You keep postponing our meeting, right? And I sat and said, here's the truth, that it takes, I'm in the midst of doing a lot right now that requires, it's very demanding. And I have to, really make sure my consciousness is elevated and I'm centered. So there are ways in which you present things that are anxiety producing. And so I have to be up for it. I have to be able to be up for that so that I can keep my consciousness elevated and myself centered. But it's just really, it's a practice of tapasya, because there is the wanting to be supportive and, like caring about someone, and then the truth of like, my goodness, the impact it can have on my consciousness, the vulnerability.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that problem consciousness can knock me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to work with somebody, in your work, so, and of course, every single example has much more than we get to talk about here, because often I think how we say things to people is so much more meaningful and important than what we're saying. But there are those people, and it's just important. In this past year, I myself have, you can only speak so much without knowing every detail, but of finding myself constantly involved with someone who had a tremendous negative magnetism around me. And I suddenly realized that I couldn't escape it. And all of you know, I'm pretty strong, and said, no, I couldn't, I needed to just cut ties. I never said anything, because in this instance, but I just quit being near that person ever. I chose to never be. And finally they said to me, I noticed that you're just choosing to not be where I am. And I said, that feels important right now. It's because I could just see negative magnetism is what it is. It's not, we can't neutralize it all the time. We just can't. So, and we need to decide, can I be there? How much can I be there? What does it mean? But for me, what's the other side of that is really finding people and ways to be where there's solution consciousness, where there's uplifted consciousness. Even I was thinking, I didn't share this with Lakshmi yet, but she came over. This was a 2-hour satsang with India that I did. I've done them a couple of times before. She often comes from 6:30 to 7:30, where there's a talk that's given and a Q&A, then a chant is done, and then we meditate for an hour. So she stays and she leads the chant. And as she was leaving, and we were starting to we had turned off our computers to do Mahamudra, and she was leaving, and we just pranammed with each other. And we don't often do that. In fact, I don't know really when the last time in that way, and I said to myself, I have to do this again, we've talked about it before, to make room 2 mornings a week or something where we're meditating together. There's no negative magnetism here, but moving into this positive wordless, because we spend so much time together, a huge amount of it is our work. We're planning, we're scheming. I thought that was such a sweet moment, and I thought, we need to go there. And it's not personal, like, oh, I just want to meditate with Lakshmi. I want to live in that space with as many people as I can, where the experiences, where the experience is consciousness expanding. Because otherwise, a lot of what we talk about. Pranav, we have just a couple more minutes, so yeah.
I would be quick. How would you apply this same thing where you have the problem consciousness coming from your own child? What if this is going to happen? What if that's going to happen? And you're like, give me a break.
Yeah.
And making them either distracted or giving a solution, but that solution always gets into another problem. What if that?
It's very different with any child. Of course, I know your child a little bit, but it is different with a child because often you can't share these teachings in the same way. You're not going to meditate. And I think our job as parents is to provide the safest, most uplifted environment that we possibly can. And if we see in ourselves, there's a mother and a father, and so it's everybody, and the environment they're in, school, to look at all of this thoughtfully and say, what example are we showing them? Why are they afraid? Some of it's karma, what's coming from us, important questions to ask, not judgmentally, but just to say, are they being given enough of an environment where they can learn when they're ready? The world is safe, first of all, and being taken care of. And it's important by two strong parents. They're here for me. And they themselves are positive, courageous, creative. And if that's not happening, what changes can go on in the home? Because you can't share these words with your child. It won't make any sense. What they experience is energy in a much purer way than we do. So, I remember when my mother was very reactive when we were young. She wasn't physically abusive, but she would yell easily and, just always be on us. We didn't clean well enough. Our chores this, that. And my father, who was very loving man, very loving, used to say to us, your mother really loves you and she doesn't mean it. Well, what do those words mean to a child? She was behaving in certain ways, was much more powerful than my father saying to me or my younger brothers who were even more vulnerable. By God's grace, I was carried through that, but my 3 siblings suffered. One of them's dead, but the other 2 are still suffering with some of their neurotic. So I don't want to just put so much responsibility. Kids come in with their own karma. But as parents, we do need to be doing our best to behave in ways that they can feel safe, that their example is one of positive energy, and not to argue with them if they want to come with other energy, but to stay still, to be calm, to not meet them there, to not get into, you can't have an argument with your 5-year-old, with your 6-year-old, with your 11-year-old, and I see so many parents do that. They try and convince the kids of something. That is just never, the kids, they're not where we are. And I think, wow, they really think they're going to talk that child out of that temper tantrum, that demand. I see it all the time. Nope, it's not going to work. Just set the limits and consciously and lovingly live in them, even if they act out. And it's when the kids start acting out that the parents lose it, then everybody suffers. What can I do to calm her down? It's not always the answer, you know. Kids need to kick and scream and yell with very safe boundaries, very safe, that they could know, I can throw this temper tantrum and carry on, but my dad is always going to be there for me. He's not giving me what I want right now, but he's there for me. And I hope that's helpful. It's complicated. Okay, friends. So glad that you come. It's really deep, these teachings are deep, so yeah, it's a great joy for me. All of you are.